We have 5 comments already.
We have 5 comments already. What is shaking? It's your boy, Marc Cordon, episode 77, Golden Mike Live, with my girl, Amanda Huggy Bear Huggins.
What's up? What is up?
Amanda Huggy Bear Huggins. Get this. She's known as the Feisty the Yogi. Why?
Mm-hmm.
She'll explain why. She worked for Gary B.
Mm-hmm.
We'll talk about that in a little bit. And today, most importantly, we're going to be talking about breaking past your anxiety and tapping into your personal power. It's not enough, y'all, to just get past anxiety. The lack of anxiety does not mean the presence of personal power. So, I am so curious to talk about that, and maybe some of the jobs that you've had have needed you to break past your anxiety and go into your personal power, Huggy Bear.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
mm-hmm.
yeah. We've got a whole bunch of people up in here. It's the Melanie Klein show. Start now.
Start now.
She's angry that we started late.
Don't make her angry.
She's all about making sure that we start on time. We started as fast as we could, but be live. You conniving sucker MCs. You do this to me every time. You mother bleepers. You do this to us every time. You make me go into anxiety and I have to push into my personal power.
Luckily, you have an anxiety coach right here with you, my friend. We can fix this.
That is awesome. For those of you who haven't met me, my name is Marc Cordon. I am the founder of the Make Money Coaching Program, and I'm happy to announce the founder of the Joy Revolution. Hit me up if you want to know what that baby is. That thing is sweet. More importantly, I'm a positive psychology coach, which means 2 things. Scale of 1 to 10. How happy are you feeling right now? It's not about this esoteric stuff. How literally happy are you right now? The second thing is this: scale of 1 to 10. How much do you feel like you're living in your full purpose? Today, Wednesday, August, what is it? 29th, 30th? 30th. 29th, whatever today is, how much do you feel like you're living in your purpose? So, Huggy Bear, this is going to be a double barreled question, but I'm going to ask you anyways.
Okay.
Are you living in your full purpose, and are you feeling like you're living in full happiness today?
100%. I think if you, oh yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, if you asked me that question this time, even a year ago, where I was tracking towards my purpose, but not quite, it just wasn't quite there yet.
Mm-hmm.
My answer would have been different. It would have been like an 80% or an 8 on a scale of 1 to 10. But where I'm at now, I'm very, very clear on what my purpose is. And through that clarity, a lot of the stuff that would normally detract from my happiness or detract from my focus, because of that clarity, all of that stuff starts to settle. So I can live in full, authentic happiness, which is like the best feeling ever.
So we're going to talk about getting to that point of clarity and maybe some things that we can do to sort of clear it all out. So maybe this time next year, when Huggy Bear takes over my show and, you're asking the same question, your guests will have cleared it out as well. Okay, for those of you watching at home, those of you watching live, those of you watching the replay, I want you to do what Huggy Bear and I are doing. You got a button. You got a button down there. We don't have the buttons in front of us. We can just make the shape. So Huggy Bear, I want you to make a heart. So for those of you who are living life in your full purpose and living to full happiness,
oh yeah,
press that heart button right now. I want you to press that button. How do they do it in Jersey? How do they make that heartbeat in Jersey?
The exact same way. There's just like a fist bump in the background. Yeah.
T-shirt time. It's T-shirt time. How did you do in California? How did they do in California? How do they make the?
I think it's just a little bit more subtle. It's like, oh, here's the heart.
Well, whatever Jacinda is making the heart, and we see you, Jacinda.
Oh, Jacinda.
Thank you.
Oh,
for
I worked
joining.
with Jacinda. She's great.
Awesome. So Jacinda asked some good questions, and do this next. The next thing is this. A lot of people think that positive psychology is about the shits and giggles and Taco Tuesdays and like unicorns pooping out Skittles on everybody. It's 24/7 happiness. And they couldn't be any more wrong. Life is about the ups, it's about the downs, it's about the all arounds. And in fact, your heart is beating just like everybody else. We can get stuck in the comparison trap, and especially here in Facebook, looking at how great Amanda Huggy Bear is doing and how great Marc Cordon is doing. They don't see all the crap that I got going on in the background. Mm-hmm. So for those of you who are in the middle of things right now and you're like, you know what, last week I was happy as hell, and Huggy Bear, like, I'm not a 10 anymore. You know, or someone can be saying like, damn, I worked this one job and it was full purpose. I was in this relationship for so long and it filled me up so much. And something's wrong now. Like my purpose is off. Your heart beats just like Huggy Bear and mine. Live your life and give us a thumbs up to let us know that you were right in the middle of your hero's journey. This is how they do it up in Jersey. This is how they do it in Jersey. Right? Now this is, hip, you don't think that I got moves?
Dance party.
Let's see if you take it.
Oh, I was going to do the sprinkler.
Sprinkler. Do the sprinkler. Walter, do the sprinkler. Do the sprinkler up there in Vancouver, Walter. It ain't about shits and giggles, Walter. So here's the final thing, y'all. Here's the final thing. And this is the biggest reason why I do positive psychology work. It's for this reason alone. Whether you're scoring as a 1 or whether you're scoring as a 10, whether you're up or whether you're down, if you know that tomorrow is just going to be a better day than today, because you're learning from today and you're going to grow from that, and it's going to become a better day because of that. If you have hope, if you have optimism, you know what? Everything is fine. Everything is just going to be fine. Sit back, enjoy the show with Huggy Bear, and you got one more button if you're optimistic. It's called the wow face. Huggy Bear, the world wants to see your wow face, Huggy Bear. What do you got?
Are you ready? I need a setup. Okay, ready?
Okay. I want to do it with you. Count to 3. Okay. 1, 2.
1, 2, 3.
Hit that
for the theater.
Hit that wow. Were you a theater major?
I was not, but I did do theater in high school, so a million years ago.
Fantastic. We got Christina Calabria coming in with a wow face. Walter with the wow face. Christina's jaw is like this big right now.
Keep it coming.
Yeah, keep them coming. Keep them coming. That's what the show's all about. So, given all of that, I mean, you're the feisty yogi. You worked with Gary Vee. We both roll deep with some really good friends, and you also have had like some pretty hardcore anxiety going on in your life. So with all of that said, like, Amanda, what's your story?
Yeah, so starting where we're at right now as an anxiety coach, I'm in like a completely different place than I thought that I would end up. And not that I've even ended up, like this is a continuous growth path, but I created this career, this job as an anxiety and self-worth coach because it was the one thing that I was looking for throughout my early 20s that I couldn't find. I didn't know existed. And it's the one thing that I really needed at the time. And so I am categorized as a millennial, right? I'm 28 years old. Millennials are right now anywhere between 22 to 37. So it's a pretty broad spectrum. But millennials are really the first generation that grew up with social media and grew up with the internet being not just common, but necessary. And that trains you to be really fast paced in your thinking and to consistently multitask. I mean, we know multitasking is scientifically impossible, but that need to multitask, to constantly do, that's been present since I remember having thoughts. So when you grow up with this sort of digital based, this instant gratification world, it breeds anxiety on a few different levels. So you have the comparison mindset, when you're on social media looking at what other people are doing with their lives. And before Instagram, it was Facebook. Before Facebook, it was MySpace. This has been around for almost 20 years now. So that's one segment of anxiety. But then there's also, just social anxiety in general, not knowing how you should show up for other people because you haven't done the work of showing up for yourself first. And so I was really experiencing a lot of that. I had always been a very goal-oriented, type A, Virgo type of person. So I knew whatever I did, I wanted to do it to the max. But I found that actually wound up being probably one of my downfalls because I became so attached early on in my career in the tech space where I worked for Gary Vaynerchuk. I was always searching for the next raise, the next promotion, the next whatever the status marker was. And I became very attached to status markers in my life. And so I was working towards all of these things that, while they were great experiences, were not filling up my soul. And that's the place where a lot of my anxiety started to come forth. And, it was a pretty rough road from there. And the high level is depression, anxiety, toxic relationships, eating disorders. I mean, the whole gamut of things. Yeah. But those were all, in my opinion, necessary because all of those quote unquote bad things that I went through were my greatest teachers.
Absolutely.
And going through those things was what led me to my calling of working with people who have gone through what I had to go through, who aren't sure of themselves, who have a lot of power but don't know how to channel it yet. And we work together to figure out where their anxieties are, how we can let go of them, move through them, and then how they can really step into a full, abundant, loving, prosperous version of themselves instead of that tiny, small version that they might have been living through.
Yeah. So I got a couple questions for you. The first thing was this: why did you choose coach versus not becoming a therapist? Because anxiety is so controlled by the, it's dominated by the sort of the therapy counseling space right now. What was it that had you move towards the coaching space?
That is a fantastic question. So I do have a background in psychology. That's part of what I went to school for. And, I don't really want to get too deep into my opinions on our current medical system. My mom's a nurse. I love people who work in the healthcare industry. I have my own opinions. Because to be perfectly honest, all of my opinions aren't fully formed yet. And I never will go out with a full statement unless I really, really know what I'm rooting into. But from where I'm at right now is that, and the feedback I've gotten from a lot of my clients is that therapy is great and fantastic and can be a wonderful tool, but it's just one facet of this enormous diamond of an experience, right? So what you might get from a CBT therapist is different than what you might get from a psychotherapist or another type of therapist. And so I don't consider myself better, worse than, opposite, in combat with therapists. Many of my clients actually are in therapy, and the work that I'm doing, which is slightly different, is an add-on that helps enrich their experience for getting to know themselves.
So are you referred to by therapists? Do therapists are they like, oh, you got to go and see so and so?
That's interesting. That's a route I would definitely look into. Not right now. I will sometimes talk to my clients, therapists, or doctors if there's a need to, and I always offer that because you want to make sure those lines of communication are clear, open, safe.
Yeah.
But it hasn't come up.
Okay. And speaking of clear, open, safe communication, did someone just put me behind a black wall, or can you see me?
Oh no, I can see you.
Okay, great. Because it just blacked out on my side. Be live, you sucker. No, I'm not going to go into it again.
Technology.
Okay, now, you said this was your calling. Calling's a strong word, right? It goes beyond job, it goes beyond career, and it goes into something that is, just using the dictionary definition, that goes into the spiritual, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Your calling is really the way that you serve the greater good. Was it like a big old apple that fell from the sky and you're like, calling ready? or was it something along the lines of, in your own journey, you were like, oh man, I'm picking up all these tools that I could use one day?
It was more of the latter. I mean, I definitely did not wake up and say, wow, I'm going to be an anxiety coach today.
Yeah.
But I will say that, I don't know how much you know about spirit guides and spirit guide communication, but I dove a couple of years ago pretty deeply into connecting with my own spirit guides. And one of the signals where I know no matter what I'm doing, and you can use the word spirit guide or not, it's just, I use it as a sign. I always know I'm on the right path when I get full body chills. And so that happened a few separate times on this journey. One, when I was sitting at the Bulletproof conference, either last year or the year before, and I don't even remember who was on stage, but like someone was talking.
Like the guy,
Dave Asprey, yeah.
The coffee guy? Okay.
Yeah. So they put on this like incredible conference. And I was every year, and I was sitting in the audience, and someone was talking about, having coaches and having mentors. And I was like, I need a new mentor, and got full body chills. I took Mastin Kipp's seminar at that conference, and then realized that I needed to go to his conference. At his conference, it was sort of a workshop on figuring out, what type of coaching you wanted to do and all of that good stuff. And when I was there, I really got the download, like my biggest teacher and the thing that I was seeking help with the most was anxiety. And that's the thing that I feel completely confident in teaching and guiding other people to work through, because I've been through it, all of it.
So it was really through like, well, number one, like this sort of complete moment of ecstasy,
Yeah.
And then number two is that you happen to be following up with that and just putting pen to paper and just mapping it out. Okay. Have you been an anxious person as long as you can remember?
Yeah. I mean, here's the thing. Anxiety it's not just about your life as an adult, because we spin up as much anxiety as we possibly can as adults who make our own choices.
Yeah.
But you have to also remember that anxiety is to a degree energetically inherited from your parents and the environment that you grew up in, and love mom and dad to death, but they are both children of ex-war vet Depression era parents. And so, a lot of that mindset trickled down. And my family is an anxious family. My sisters are very anxious, and it's sort of the way that it was normal, So when I remember being a kid, this is my very first memory of anxiety. I was in my bedroom in my parents' house. I was no older than 12 maybe. And I was laying down and I could not sleep that night because I knew that I had to babysit the next morning and couldn't decide what I wanted to do with my babysitting money. And I was so anxious about that. I was like, do I save the $10? Do I buy the Britney Spears CD? Do I go to the mall and get earrings from Claire's? Like, that was truly what was running through my head. And I didn't sleep. And I remember that so vividly because I was like, what is this? Like, as a kid.
Britney Spears, dude.
I mean, it's like a no-brainer, obviously.
No-brainer. And I'm talking about like going and you have to buy the thing, and you know how there's a big old plastic thing.
Oh yeah,
it's a whole experience. Yeah. Well, I think one of the things that I think that you're throwing out here is this idea that even as children, like nurture can completely shape the way that you view or that you handle stress. But then you probably know this way better than I do, but like nature is also a big deal. So like if someone is coming in stressed, and then your parents, they especially did this with PTSD studies. Someone would come back with PTSD, they'd consummate with their husband or wife. It actually showed lower strands of DNA polymerase, which is the stress. It's the indicator of stress. The shorter it is, the more stressed out a person is. And there were statistically significant evidence showing that children were born stressed, even before they had the opportunity to have $10 to spend on a Britney Spears album. So, I mean, you're really looking at something that's compounding, right? Stress from the things that you inherit almost genetically, to stress that happens as a result of nurture. So that's wild stuff. Yeah. So talk to us now. Like, we're all technically, I wouldn't say that we're all technically stressed, but we all get anxiety every now and then. What is it that you, when working with clients, first have them do to really maybe lower that stress level down a little bit?
Yeah, so the first thing that we do in any one-on-one, even a group client setting, is to define what anxiety means for you. Because, we talked about this a little bit, but anxiety has been so normalized in our society. It's become almost a colloquialism, like, oh, I'm so anxious. Oh, that's giving me anxiety. Haha, that meme about anxiety is funny, And so in all of that talk, we do normalize the thoughts, feelings, and sensations that anxiety creates within the body. And so I always have my clients sit down and we do a means, feels, and creates exercise. So you write down what anxiety means, and that would be the definition. Like, anxiety means a feeling of X, Y, and Z in your body, whatever. And then you do anxiety feels like. And that's where I want my clients to get into understanding where the feeling of anxiety takes place in their body, whether it's shortness of breath, thumping in the chest. A lot of people reach for up here. It's that neck area up, frenetic energy. So we want to identify where you feel the anxiety. And then we also, the last step in this like initial set is to recognize what your anxiety creates in you, which is essentially the combination of means and feels like. If I know this is what anxiety means, and I know that this is what it feels like in my body, when it is present, this is how I then show up in the outside world. This is what happens when I have anxiety and I'm interacting with people at work, in my friendships, in my relationships, right? And so in doing this, you get the full spectrum of where you're at with your anxiety, because a lot of the discontent that we feel, the anxiety related discontent, is Very simply from not pausing to look at where it's coming from first. You got to stop and listen. I'm a type A, high energy, fast paced person. I know how hard it is to slow down.
Yeah.
But the most anxious people are usually the ones who are the most hesitant to slow down and take a look at what's up. And so it's really critical that you understand what anxiety means, what it feels like, and what it creates in you, so that when you see that, you then have a deeper commitment to yourself to start working through it.
That's freaking awesome. For those of you who are tuning in live or not paying attention to the replay right now, it's Marc Cordon. I'm with Amanda Huggy Bear Huggins, anxiety self-worth coach. We're getting a lot of bumps up here when it comes to people who are liking and loving what it is that you're saying. I'm curious, y'all. Eric, I see you. Kayla, I see you. Marilyn Rose, I see you up in Jersey.
Yeah, Jersey.
Jersey fresh. I'm curious to see, what is it? What are you getting out of this? What are some of the takeaways that you're getting, and what are the questions that you have for our anxiety self-worth coach today? I know for me, I think that I've never thought about taking anxiety and sort of deconstructing it in a way where it's true. Like, even as a neuroscience major, it's like, oh, there's a certain definition, or a psychology major, there's a certain definition that I have of it. But also at the same time, I'm like, ooh, the feels, I haven't thought about how it makes me feel. And I haven't thought about how it makes me feels more than an emotional thing too. Like, the tightness of the chest is something that happens a lot, with me. Like, oh, it tightens up. I gotta breathe. I can't breathe. And then how this shapes the way that I show up, I think it's freaking genius. Matt Mills, I think I saw you just jump in. So, what are y'all's thoughts on it? Please, this is not just a two-way conversation. We want to include everybody in on this. So questions, thoughts, what's going through your head, because everybody feels it. So I think also at the same time, when it comes to anxiety, right, there's that first stage of sort of going and kind of making like this diagnostic checklist of what's going on. What about things like triggers? How important is that when it comes to anxiety?
That's literally the next thing that I do with every client is,
okay,
we have a conversation. Once we ground ourselves in like, okay, this is where I feel anxiety. This is how it manifests in my life, in my body, in my relationships. Then we have a really honest conversation. And sometimes it's also a writing exercise where we look at the spectrum of your life: good, bad, ugly, confusing, unclear. And we pull out every single potential anxiety trigger. And I push my clients to dig deeper and deeper and deeper, because we all know our very baseline anxiety triggers. The things that are going to stress you out, like the top 5, we probably already know. And those are great. They're also great indicators of what lies underneath the surface, because it's never just one or two things. There's a little P of information underneath those bigger anxiety groupings, and you want to get down to that P. So for example, let's say I have a client who is terrified of going on dates, and she knows that dates bring her anxiety. So from that like high level umbrella anxiety trigger, we look at, okay, so dates bring you anxiety. They bring you anxiety. Why? Because it means that you may be judged. Why are you uncomfortable with being judged? Because you might be rejected. Where does this fear of rejection come from? Why is that there? How can we learn to reframe our relationship with rejection so that instead of seeing it as, oh, this dagger to my heart, it's, wow, I just learned something about myself.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
It kind of does. It's still a little esoteric, and for the sake.
Do you want to workshop it?
Yeah, can we work? Let's workshop.
Yeah. All right. All right. Give me an anxiety point for you, Mark.
Okay. Snakes. No. I think an anxiety point is up leveling. Having conversations with people who I know I can serve the shit out of, and also knowing that I am worthy of a higher price when it comes to coaching.
So that's interesting, because that's, in complete transparency, that's something that I've had to go through and will continue to go through time and time again. It's true, right? Yeah. And so if you were my
you don't have to be like, you don't have to dance around numbers. I'll tell you, whatever it is, I'll just pretend like there's a real one.
Well, also, and I won't get into numbers. I don't think that necessarily serves this conversation, but if you were my client, but here's the thing. Are you not worth $1 million? I think you are.
Oh, you bastard. I called you a bastard on my show.
Woo! But so you see my point is your anxiety is not just, do I charge more or do I not? Your anxiety is related to your self-worth. And so if you were my client, we would go very deep into your early childhood and your adolescent experiences to figure out where you are still holding ties to issues with your self-worth. And then through a series of writing exercises and prompts and some really deep digging, I coach my clients through healing those periods of time in their lives where that self-worth, or that, whatever that issue may have been, where that was formed, we break it down, we befriend it, and then we pull the learnings out of it. Because once you pull a learning out of a perceived negative experience, it can no longer be negative. It is purely a teacher, and it's something for you to be grateful for.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. So if we have to go into healing in certain areas, does that mean that there's certain areas of me that are wounded?
Oh, absolutely. We're all wounded.
Okay.
And there's nothing wrong. That's a big thing that I work on with my clients too, is there's nothing wrong with being wounded. An open wound is actually a beautiful thing. And, it's a really big shame because, and especially for men in our society, you are not allowed to have an open wound. That's seen as a weakness. That's seen as there's something wrong with you. And that's a shame, because we are all humans given a spectrum of emotions. And it's an enormous disservice for us to only look at and only celebrate the lighter side emotions. We have to embrace, we have to look at and experience the shadow side emotions as our teachers. So yes, we're all wounded, but it's growth-based mindset work. It's constantly looking for the wounds and healing them in a more rapid time frame, because we don't have to stay wounded for 5 years of our lives. We can stay wounded for 5 minutes if we have the mental capacity and the power of choice over our emotions.
And that's what I call coaching in general. You have the ability to get something done, but coaching really accelerates. You almost jump through some portals sometimes where you think that something's not going to happen for 20 years and it can happen in a month, right? I haven't been paying attention to the boards here, and I didn't realize that you've been completely blowing up here. Jacinda.
Oh, shoot.
Jacinda. She is wonderful with her coaching because she has helped me stand and have confidence in my own self. It's continual work, and I can work through it easily now. Love it.
Jacinda is... Her Instagram name has Butterfly Journey in it, and she was like the complete example of a butterfly's journey, from caterpillar to working through these things to figuring out some stuff, and she is like full on butterfly. It's incredible.
Full on. Walter the philosopher. Because of the wounds, our world can feel unsafe, and we show up in self-protection mode. Good one, Walter.
Absolutely.
Gary Fleming, the human penguin, says, our anxieties triggered by a lack of self-worth or by others' perception of your worth that impact your life, spouse, supervisor, client.
Others' perception of your worth is your perception of your worth, because the people that we surround ourselves with are mirrors, right? That's why you have people in your life who like the same things as you. When you're in a positive, excited, inspired mood, you're surrounding yourself with people who are of the same tone. So, and the same goes for the other end of the spectrum. When someone is calling out or feels into some perceived lack of self-worth in you, the reason you can recognize it is because you still recognize it in yourself. So the question, it's true, man. I mean, the question to ask, and there's, by the way, there is nothing wrong with that. That is like the most human experience. And it's actually, again, a beautiful thing, because if you are saying to yourself, wow, I don't know, it feels like Marc doesn't think that I'm smart enough, or maybe Marc doesn't think I'm good enough for the show. The question I would ask myself is, Amanda, do you not think that you're smart enough? Why not? Where is that coming from? So it's never about the other person. It's always about what's going on in your own experience.
Yeah. Well,
you're good enough. Hard.
Well, you're good enough, you're smart enough, and doggone it, people like you.
Like you.
I like the fact that the people we surround ourselves with are mirrors. So given that, I'm a firm believer that when we're growing, we kill our old self off and we grow into new ones all the time. So would this mean that sort of, as you're growing, people will say the same things to you, and it just has it no longer resounds, like I can no longer relate to that. Yeah.
And especially the path that I've been on. So, we didn't get into this too much, but I started off my early career in New York City, and I was a huge party girl. And that's where a lot of my anxiety and self-worth issues came from, because instead of looking inward, I was constantly anesthetizing with whatever was out there so that I didn't have to sit with myself. And so you surround yourself with party boy, party girl friends, and that's well and good. But as you start to grow out of those phases of your life and mature into, in my experience, mature into what my calling actually was, a lot of those conversations and a lot of those friendships no longer resonate. And that's okay.
Yeah.
That happens a lot with my clients too. When you are going through massive periods of expansion, you are growing into a new person. And it doesn't mean that you have to say, F you old life, F you old friends. You can lovingly part way with all of those things and all of those people. And you may not even fully part ways, but you have to be open to the reality that your relationship with a lot of the things that you've lived with or worked with, that those relationships will shift.
Yeah. And I'm thinking that's something that, I mean, to be quite honest, I'm not sure if I've seen a person who has really grown into their greatness and not had to change their social relationships. Some of the ways that I think about it is like everybody's walking up that mountain together.
Yeah.
And sometimes you have to let go of some people's hands in order for you to get to the summit by yourself. And I can see some people seeing that as a very difficult thing.
I think it can also be perceived as being selfish too. When you have to say, I really have to focus on myself right now, or that type of behavior, these conversations isn't filling me up. It absolutely can be perceived in certain lights as selfish, but and I'm sure that you ground down in this too, is you're focusing on something very specific and very important. And by taking care of yourself, surrounding yourself with people who are inspiring, who are filling you up, who are motivating you, that is going to get you to the top of this proverbial mountain. It's from that place that you are actually going to help so many more people. And so it can't actually be selfish, but you have to be compassionate that it could be perceived as that sometimes, and that's okay.
So good, so good. So when we were getting ready for this show 36 hours ago, you talked about this, and I highlighted this. The idea of shining light on the reality that the massive anxiety of our society is dealing, or that our society is dealing with today, is changeable and deeply connected to our understanding of self-worth. And I know that you touched upon it. I took a couple times that anxiety really might be coming back to self-worth, but like on a societal level, like where that's like part of the zeitgeist, like,
yeah.
Talk more about that.
So I think there are two thoughts, or one and the same thought as well. So
Okay.
On a societal level, our anxiety has been normalized. That was really more of what I was getting to, is that and I mentioned this before, like if you go on Instagram, you go on Facebook, there's all these memes that sort of celebrate, we're all so stressed out, we're all so anxious, like this is just how it is. And those conversations on an enormous societal level make us feel okay, right? It's like I always liken it to when you were in middle school and you're about to take a test that you didn't study for, and it's not good. It's not good that you didn't study for this test. But you ask all your friends, you're like, did you study? And your friend's like, no. And you're like, did you study? And the other person's like, no. And you feel better because you're like, oh, they also did the same bad thing that I did. We all didn't study, so it's not great, but we're all kind of on the same playing field. And that's what anxiety is like right now. We're all anxious. We know it's bad, but we're like, all right, this is just what it is. And it is changeable. It is absolutely changeable. And I use myself as the example. I am a very stereotypical elder millennial. Worked in New York, worked in San Francisco, worked in the tech industry, was a yoga teacher, was a meditation teacher. There's a lot of different stereotypical facets that make up me. Yeah. And I had the comparison mindset anxiety, which we know is the thief of joy. I had career-related anxiety. I was getting myself into deeply toxic relationships. And because of body image anxiety, and because of all of this, I was just one ball of depression. I mean, that's really what the level up from anxiety is you sit with it for so long, you become so small, so fearful that you wind up becoming depressed or afraid to show up in the world. And so I was the pinnacle of anxiety. And so if I can work through it, I guarantee that you can work through it. It is absolutely possible. It's absolutely changeable.
She's pounding the desk right now.
I care, man. It's true.
She cares. Kayla's got a question for us right now. And it does have to do with depression and anxiety. What is the relation between depression and anxiety?
It's a great question. So I preface this, I probably should have prefaced this earlier, that I am not a psychologist. I am not a psychiatrist, but I have experienced anxiety and I have experienced depression. And I also work with clients who have experienced both. And so anything I say is just my understanding from the work that I've done. Now, that being said, they are very closely connected. They're like kissing cousins, in my opinion, because and the way that in my experience that it's come up is anxiety is the tip of the iceberg, right? We talked about triggers. Those triggers are not just cursory surface level things that are happening in our immediate present. Those triggers indicate something that happened to us earlier on in our lives, in our past, that we need to look at. And depression in many cases is a result of still being attached to a trauma that's happened in your past, or in your immediate current state too, but usually it's a past state. So they both have these like deeper roots. Anxiety is more of this momentary or fleeting experience for many of my clients. So one of the biggest pieces of feedback that I get in our initial calls is they'll say, Yeah, I don't know. Like I was feeling really, really good for like 2 weeks, and all of a sudden I'm anxious again. And then I had a good week, and then I had a good day, and then I'm anxious again. And so it's sort of this like where depression is, in my experience, has been more of this heavy blanket that dulls the entire experience. Does that make sense? But their relationship is very deeply connected. I think that anxiety is your light bulb moment to say, I got to look at this before I hang on to these attachments and it turns into something deeper.
Yeah, and even neuroscience wise, it's like the same bundle there that's together. I want thanks, Kayla. I wanted to go back to sort of that idea of normalizing anxiety and how much of our society does normalize not only anxiety but so many other things, right? So I worked in higher education for 14 years, and I remember, and I'm sure in the areas that you've worked at, like you'd ask somebody how they're doing, and they'd come back with, just making it today. I'm good.
Don't get me started.
I'm getting started right now.
That is my biggest pet peeve. I have written. I have an email list. I love my email list. I write to them all the time. I can't even tell you how many times I've written to my list explaining that good, I'm busy is my biggest pet peeve. And I say this in my yoga classes too. We ask people all the time, hey, how you doing? But we never listen for the answer because we kind of, I did get started here. Yeah. We never listen for the answer because we don't have time to listen for the answer. And that in itself is to me a huge flag that we need to slow down collectively. Yeah. But beyond even that, beyond even asking other people, Marc, how you doing? When was the last time that you sat down and asked yourself, how am I doing? And then when was the last time that you listened to the answer?
That's a good question.
Because we rush through the questions with other people, barely listen then. Guarantee we would all have less anxiety if we made it a daily practice to check in and say, how am I doing right now? What do I need? And can I honor what I need? Even if that answer means rest, even if that answer means you say no to something. And that's why we kind of look away from that work, because sometimes the answer isn't what we want to hear.
Oh, beautiful. Do you see how it's all coming full circle? It's like a Tarantino movie right now.
Always, man.
Well, I think at the other side of that, the receiver isn't necessarily listening, and the sender is programmed to just say, I'm doing okay. Like there is no, like, I'm flourishing, I'm loving life, I'm living the dream, like it couldn't be better right now. Because like that is almost a disruptor for someone to say, okay, so like, okay, what's with you today, right? And so that's why I went into positive psychology, because I want to look at those folks who are not wanting to put up with the, I'm getting by and doing fine. Like I want to see those folks who are like over, producing what they love and like completely doing it, and they're unapologetic about doing it. Like I'm living the dream, baby.
And those people who are confident and unapologetic and saying that they're living the dream, they're having the best life ever, they have high self-worth. They have done the work of understanding their value. They have done the work of releasing anxiety around, is it okay that I talk about myself in a positive light? Is it okay that I say that I'm doing good? Is that too selfish? Is that egocentric? The people who are saying, I'm fucking awesome right now. I'm doing great. Life is awesome. High self-worth.
Yeah. So is that you?
Oh yeah, man. I'm doing awesome.
So we've talked about some really heavy stuff here, right? And now I think as we sort of come to the ending moments of the show, I am most interested in the possibility of releasing years of anxiety that we've created within ourselves, and what are some tactics that we can do to actually start releasing those things?
Sure. So when we know what anxiety is, you'll find your individual triggers. Usually, once you recognize your triggers, we start to shift our relationship to them. So it's unpacking them. So say we had some self-worth stuff go on in our past. We really look at that. We break down that relationship. We understand that. That's great. When you are now off on your own functioning as this person who recognizes where their anxiety comes from, that becomes the number one work, is to recognize when it starts to come up. Recognize when you feel your anxiety in your chest, in your heart, in your gut. And in those moments, making a very conscious choice to change your mindset, to say, okay, I know that I'm feeling this right now, but this is just a feeling. What is the truth of this situation? If I am nervous, can I find empowerment? If I am feeling sad, can I find joy in something? It's shifting our thoughts. It's triaging in the moment. And then as you start to make this a practice, I always say it's like going to the gym. You don't go to the gym, work out once, and you're Arnold Schwarzenegger. You don't recognize you have anxiety, shift your thoughts once, and you're healed. It is a journey. And there's going to be growth edges. There's going to be valleys. There's going to be peaks. Forgiveness when you're in a low point. Forgiveness if all of a sudden you do get really anxious again. Because what also happens for a lot of people is that they're doing really great. You're feeling good. You're feeling awesome. You haven't felt anxious in a while. You're like super, super powerful. And then something happens that knocks you completely off your bike and you're on the ground with skin knees. Do not beat yourself up when that happens, because all that does is it keeps you small. It keeps you small, and it pushes you back into that old mindset of, oh, you're right, I can't do anything. I'm not good enough. I'm not this, I'm not that. Bring it back. Yeah, that sucked. Okay, Amanda, you're still awesome. Still love you to death. Let's figure out what went wrong here, and let's try to make it better, and you keep moving. It's all about momentum.
Love it. Love it. I've heard enough. Amanda,
amazing.
Huggy Bear, I have heard enough. We've got a couple things going on here. Kayla wanted to say, sometimes when I get asked, I really ask myself, Wade, how am I doing? And answer myself, even though I answer the other people, I'm good. So I guess there's some incongruency there, right? Is that what I'm picking up?
Yes, there is incongruency, but Kayla, I will say that that's more than most people are doing, because you're at least acknowledging, okay, what I said, I'm good. I know that that's actually not true. How do I actually feel? Right? And here's the other thing is that incongruency might not be the worst thing, because if it's just a random person on the street who's like, hey, how you doing while you're walking your dog? Are you going to say, I'm really going through a rough time right now, man? That's not the situation. But with a loved one, with someone you trust, with yourself, that's the place to be very honest and very open and very inquisitive about your experience.
Gotcha. We got our boy Cody Hansen. I find too many people have relationships with others before having one with themselves. No wonder we have anxiety.
It's like the stereotypical thing they say on the plane. You got to put your oxygen mask on before you help anyone else. It's not an act of selfishness. It's not some weird airplane rule that Virgin America decided you had to do.
It's not an airplane rule.
You have to put your mask on first. And unfortunately, we're not really trained that on an emotional level when we're growing up. So, and listen, that's a part of life, right? You're supposed to have relationships and mess up and learn about yourself and know nothing about yourself in some, and it's part of the experience. But as someone who has a growth-based mindset, as someone who is committed to bettering yourself, you do need to know yourself very, very well before you get in. And listen, relationship is not just romantic. The relationship you and I have, Mark, is a relationship.
Yeah.
When I go to A new meeting, I'm forging a new relationship. The studios I work at are relationships. Everything is a relationship. And so no matter what, you need to know who you are, because otherwise people are just going to get like a weird bouncy reflection of your personality because it's what you think they want to see, you know?
Yeah, it's a big old caricature.
Yeah, totally.
Okay, I've heard enough. Amanda Huggy Bear Huggins, I have officially heard enough.
Amazing.
I've heard enough. What a great episode. Busted Be Live, and also at the same time, we had an amazing group of people with us today. Kayla, Cody, everybody else, thanks for joining us. What I wanted to throw out is where we get your Instagram, right? Your Instagram. Go to it now. The Feisty Yogi. That's who you want to look up on Instagram. www.instagram.com/the Feisty Yogi. That's how you find her on the interwebs. And I've got one more thing for you. And it's this. It is a visioning exercise.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I want you to imagine all the way on the West Coast that there is a golden mic that is descending from your ceiling, and it's stopping right in front of you. Now, Amanda, this golden mic has the amplification power to go across all countries, and every person will be listening. So when I flip the golden mic, you have 2 minutes or less to say whatever it is that you want. So Amanda, your golden mic is live now.
Okay. Wherever you are at in your life is exactly where you're supposed to be. It is exactly where you are supposed to be, and you have a choice as to how to move forward always. Even if it seems like things are really hard, even if it seems like you don't have a choice, you at least have a choice in how you want to show up. And can you choose? My question to you is, can you choose happiness? Can you choose yourself? And from that place, all of the other distractions, the tensions, the anxieties, all of that stuff starts to fade. But you have to be compassionate about yourself, where you're at in this moment. Forgiveness if you feel like you're not doing enough. Forgiveness if you feel like you're doing too much. And choose yourself, choose joy, and know that you are exactly where you need to be. That's it, man.
Hold that golden mic out. Now I want you to smash that golden mic.
Boom, man.
$1 million golden mic.
Oh my God, I'm so sorry.
She's destroyed my golden mic. Oh, Amanda, you dropped it. I hope we have you back. Hopefully we'll be eating some In-N-Out burgers next week, my friend.
I think we will.
I think we will.
I'm very excited.
It's been an honor to talk to you. What an awesome show. Final thing is this. If you're feeling amazing and you're living your life to its fullest purpose, what is your responsibility to change history for the better? This has been episode 77 of The Golden Mic. It's your boy, Marc Cordon, and Amanda Huggy Bear Huggins. Tomorrow we come at you with Chris, the Super Connector Winfield. But until then, we're shutting it down. Thanks, y'all. And share this out. Thanks.
Yeah.